Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. And today I am joined by Mr. John David. John is a longtime public relations and crisis communications consultant. He's the author of a nonfiction business book and is a corporate ghostwriter. His debut novel, The Bystander, won the 2025 Page Turner Award for Mystery Novels and was longlisted for the BPA First Novel Award and was awarded as the finalist for the 2025 Story Trade Book Award for Traditional Mysteries. Though not a big joiner, he is also a member of the International Writers Debut Author Program. And when he's not working or writing, he enjoys fishing, talking about politics, and following the Florida Gators. He currently lives in Florida with his beautiful wife. And so today he's here. He's going to share a little bit more about the bystander, kind of share a little bit more about the process that it took to write that book. So, John, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to it. And welcome to Southern Reads.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So, you worked at kind of the journalism degree for a very long time. You did a lot of PR stuff and worked with uh in the communications, but share with me a little bit about how you started your writing journey and what made you want to become an author.
Well, for me, it was I'd always read a lot of like when I was younger. I guess I read a lot of read a lot of novels, read a lot of thrillers, mystery novels, things like that, and and I was probably when I was so again back when I was single many years ago, 28 years ago. I read a lot of books, but then I met my wife. I got married. I had kids, and as I like to say, something's got to give. You only have so much time, And for me, my novel reading, dropped off pretty dramatically after I got married, and then my kids grew up and they went away to college and got into the workforce and all that, and I kind of found some more time and I really rediscovered novels, rediscovered thrillers, and I one there was just sort of one day there was like a sort of inciting incident that happened. Story that happened it was in the news. I found it really interesting, and I was like, that could be the backdrop for a novel, and I'm just crazy enough to try to write it. And so that's kind of how my novel writing career began. I just jumped in feet first and gave it a run.
So when you came out with the book, you did a whole process of writing it. When you first came out with it, uh, what made you want to work on doing nonfiction rather than doing fiction and all these other genres out there?
Well, I wrote a business book about 10 years ago, which is a nonfiction book. So that was sort of like my real first my first foray into the publishing world. And so I wrote a book about online reputation issues. And that kind of gave me a bit of an introduction to the publishing world, but nonfiction and fiction are like two different beasts. And so I then I kind of had this idea to write a novel, and that's why I kind of jumped into into fiction that way.
So the Bystander is kind of a nonfiction book. Share with me a little bit about what the Bystander really focuses on, and
Well, it's
was
a
it
novel. It's a novel. It's a fiction. It's a work of fiction.
what inspired you to write the Bystander?
So I had there was an incident that happened. So back in 2022, there was an incident at a mall in Indiana. A guy went into a mall in Indiana with an assault rifle and started shooting, and he killed three people. And it's a tragic tale. Except there was a young man in the food court at the mall who his name was Eli Dickin, and he was a concealed carry guy, had his own handgun. He took out his gun and he actually killed the active shooter. So an armed bystander killed an active shooter. And I just thought it was a really interesting story. I read everything I could find on it. I read every story I could find on it about in the internet about it. And I thought, this could be like the backdrop. This is such an interesting topic to me. Gun rights, gun safety, gun laws. Um, act of heroism, all those things. It just it gave me an idea of like what if I wrote a novel with this as a backdrop, and that's how my first novel started.
Did you do kind of any interviews with him to kind of get a little bit more of a sense of how to kind of structure your story and what you really wanted to focus on?
No, I did not. Actually, it was just one I really wanted to it's one of those things. It's all sort of it's the made up world, right? It's like I looked at what happened, but I didn't want to get I don't really write in like hyper detail about you know um the nuts and bolts like police procedural type stuff. So I'm not a gun owner myself, so I didn't want to get too heavily into into that aspect of it. But I do understand, and I did learn and did research a lot about sort of like the politics of gun ownership, and I've from personal experience talking to people that I've known for a long time, that kind of gave me a little bit of insight into that world. But it's really just sort of the inciting incident that starts the novel, and then it's a mystery and it builds from there.
How did you go about the writing process? Did you do a lot of bulk writing at one time, or did you do kind of like write for an hour every day? How did you want to approach the writing
That's
process?
good question. Really good question. I'm not a I get up at I'm not a get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and write 1,000 words before the sun rises kind of a guy. I know there's people who can do it, and good for them, and that's great. That's their process. Mine is more of I kind of write in fits and starts and bits and whatever whenever I have a moment, and then and I'm now working on my third novel. My second novel came out back in May, so I'm now working on my third novel. And what I've noticed, unfortunately, is I'm a very deadline-driven person, and so I kind of I have goals in my mind of like, okay, I want to try to write this many words, a week or whatever, so that I'm not behind, under the gun. But I still feel that that deadline pressure of okay, I'm supposed to deliver my manuscript to my publisher by X date. That motivates me and gets me moving.
So when it came to the publishing process, how did you go about? Did you want to work with a traditional publisher or do you do self-publishing?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to work with a traditional publisher, and I spent about 18 months trying to find an agent, and I actually never I don't have an agent. I'm unagented. But I reached out to several small presses, and I got more interest there, got more traction there, and I ended up signing with a small traditional publisher called Thule Publishing. They're based in California, and I signed an agreement with them to write a 3 book series.
So since the release of the book, what's been the overall reception and overall feedback that you've received so far?
So far, it's been great. I mean, I thought my first book, I've been fortunate that I submitted for a few different awards, and so it's gotten some critical success. I the Bystander was won the Page Turner Award in the mystery genre. It was on the short list for the overall top award at for the Page Turner Awards. Was named one of the best thrillers of 2025 by the bestthrillers.com website, which reviews lots of different thriller books. So it was a finalist. I wasn't a winner, but it was named one of the top thrillers of 2025. And sales are trucking along. You can always have more, right? You can always find more readers, but for the most part, it's been it's things have gone well. The reception so far to the book has been quite good.
I know that you had mentioned that you have a deal where you're doing like a 3 books with this company. After the 3 book deal's up, what's your plan after that when it comes to your writing career?
So there, I mean, I may write more books for the series. I just haven't committed to it yet. I've had conversations about it, but I haven't quite. I'm not there yet. So the third book in my series is scheduled to come out in March of 2027. So what this recording is at the end of, or whatever, the end of June of 2026. So I got a little bit of time to figure out what's going to happen next. So but it could end up being a 5 book series, 6 book series. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Who would you say were some of your or some big influences for you when it comes to writing? Who did you look up to and really who it has really inspired you?
So I think I think that we're sort of all a product of all the things we've read. So I think for me it starts with just general literature, all the stuff you read and they make you read in high school, in middle school, junior high, all that stuff. And then for me, I would say one um, author who's always been influential to me is Carl Hyacin. And Carl Hyacin is he's really very well known in South Florida where I live, and he was a former newspaper reporter at the Miami Herald, columnist, and he writes kind of wacky fiction, satirical fiction, and he's a local guy, so he was always he was an influence for me for sure, and then. I really kind of discovered the thriller genre with John Grisham. So he was probably another influence for me. It was just, when I I was around when, John Grisham's first novels came out and they really took hold and captured the public. And he's always been a big influence for me.
Well, would you say that since becoming a writer and being an author, ha is it difficult for you per se of being a writer? Is it difficult to kind of draft books, or what would you say is the m most challenging part of being an author?
It's a really good question as well. Also, I think that there's I don't know. I don't think any of it's really easy, right? I think you're using and when I say any of it easy, meaning that when you start off, you write a book and it's like you have to you're coming up with your sort of overall ideas, and then you're refining those ideas and then going through the editing process and all those things none of those things I think are particularly easy. They just sort of to me they just sort of use different parts of your brain and it's different. Some days I'm in the mood to edit and some days I'm not. Some days I'm really in the mood to draft and some days I'm not. Um, and then the next thing is that you're really kind of, even if in my case, I'm traditionally published, but I feel like I'm kind of running my own little business, when it comes to trying to build a readership. And that's also really challenging. Even though I have a public relations background, and so I feel pretty comfortable doing promotional things like this, basically talking to podcasts and also I've gotten some traditional media coverage and gone out and found reviews and all that stuff. So there's just a lot to it. There's a lot more to it. It's not just, hey, these days, at least as far as I can tell in the publishing world, it's not just write your book, and then you write however many thousands of words, and then at the end you type the end, and then you hand it over to a publisher, and then you write the next one. There's the whole editing process, and then the publishing process, and then the marketing of it all, and the promotions of it all, and you're doing that while you're writing your second book, and then you're doing that while you're writing your third book. So it's all kind of this. All these things are sort of blended together, and that's I think the big challenge of trying to put your trying to that you're trying to create you're trying to write good books and then also put them in the hands of readers at the same time. It's a lot.
Did you ever imagine yourself being a publishing author, or if you had not become an author, where would you be at this point in your life?
Well, I mean, I'm still a public relations consultant. It's my main job. So it's like I still have this is sort of like I kind of call it my side hustle. The it's so I mean I didn't really aspire to write books. It's not something that I thought of or that I never sort of thought. I guess I was one of those people who thought maybe there's a novel in me somewhere. But it wasn't something that I really aspired to. I wrote a business book, and I kind of that was another situation where I just came up with an idea and I decided to try it and see if I could do it. And I was able to publish a business book, and I have a nonfiction agent, and I got a book deal, and I got an advance to write a nonfiction book, and all those things. That was like 10 years ago. But I never really it wasn't like something that was just like screaming to come out of me. But once I started the process, I enjoyed it. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the storytelling. So it's been that aspect of it has been very interesting and to a certain extent fulfilling, I guess. So we're still trying to find more readers.
Where would you like to see yourself 10 years from now when it comes to maybe looking ahead of how you want to go about your writing career?
I mean, I think like anybody else who's writing books and who's kind of trying to break through. I'd like to see myself on on the other side a little bit more. I'd like to see I like to see a larger readership and have more people have found my books and have it sort of more in that sort of traditional rhythm of you know write a book a year, promote a book a year, kind of thing. Um, that sort of world would be great. It would be great to be, writing, continuing to write a series, maybe writing a standalone, that kind of thing. Just sort of have a 10 years from now, be publishing, maybe publishing, bigger books and maybe having a nice backlist.
What advice would you give to someone that maybe they're wanting to become a writer this excuse me, a writer themselves? What advice do you have for them of how they can begin to have a successful fiction writing career?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you have to start and you have to, find your own what your process is. And like I said, there are stories out there and plenty of them where people say, yeah, no, that like I said before, they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they write 1,000 words every day and that they but I think and listen, if you can do that and then that's you can get up in the morning, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, write 1,000 words, and then have your coffee, take a shower, go to work. Good for you. That's great. If you can do it, fantastic. If it works for you, fantastic. If you turn out a good product, fantastic. But I think the more likely approach is that you have to find a writing process that works for you, and then you have to believe in your work. You have to write you have to create a quality product, which it ultimately is. A book's a product, so you have to write a good book, and then you have to navigate the publishing, the challenge of getting that work published. But I think the biggest thing is starting and believing in it, and you being open to getting feedback, and um, every great book has great editing. So it's all, yeah, you have to kind of really embrace the process and be prepared for it take some time. I mean, I think the publishing seems to really be a slow burn of a business. And it's kind of a slog. I've said that a million times. So it's like it takes time, but I think if you if you believe in your work, I think that it's worth it.
Well, I think all this is really great advice. I think so many people are going to find a lot of inspiration behind your story of being able to become a writer, and because it's difficult being a writer. There's a lot of things that I think a lot of people are not really aware of. So I appreciate you for wanting to for sharing your story and to sharing your journey with in the writing career. What when people read your books and they read the three books that you have been working on and have released, what's the overall takeaway that you want them to get when they read the books?
I think also really it's a good question and a thoughtful question. For me, I mean, my books they're meant to be entertainment, right? I mean, there's some, I think that real life things make your entertainment a little bit more interesting, but I'm trying to entertain people. I want someone to read one of my books and find it to be interesting, to wonder what this, to kind of follow the mystery along, try to figure out what's happening, try to understand and predict the twists, and ultimately that you want your reader to be entertained, to be turning the page, and that's really what I'm going for. Is I'm going for entertaining, page turning, write a novel that you read, and maybe it takes you a couple of days to get through it. Not it's not necessarily something that's gonna. My books are not are fast paced, and they're not really super long. So it's I'm frequently flattered when someone tells me, I read your book over the weekend. I thought it was good. I thought it was, and there's parts of it are funny and parts of it are interesting. So I think that's really what I'm going for.
Well, John, I appreciate you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today to share your story and to really talk about, share your books with my audience and everything. For people interested in the books and they would like to check the books out more, where can they go to learn more information and where can they go to follow you to stay up to date about any other books that you may have coming out in the future?
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, so my website is byjohndavid.com, so byjohndavid.com. And my books, so I've right now have two books out on the market. The first two books in my series, my first book is called The Bystander. It was released in September of 2025. And the second book in the series is called The Pawn, and that was released in May of 2026. And so they're available everywhere books are sold online. So on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org, and also there's links on my website to purchase the books, and you can order them from your local bookstore. They're not going to be on the shelf in your local bookstore, but if you go to your local bookstore, they can generally order them. And so that's the best way to find my stuff.
And I will put all of his links in the description box below. So just feel free to check out the show notes and everything. All of his links will be down there, website, socials, everything will be there. So just feel free to check those out. You're more than welcome to also follow me on the socials as well. You can reach out to me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern.reads. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcasts. And feel free to also check out the website, noahspodcasts.com, to learn more about this show as well as the other shows that I have. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today's episode. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe so you get notified of when new episodes like this come out in the future. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I will catch you all in the next episode of Southern Reads.